Plans, whether realized or not, do their best. And we have got to keep on. We meant to start here, a new year in Finland with cloud banks slanting down. From the Innocence Mission song, When the One-Flowered Suitcase.
Hi, this is Nala, and welcome back to the Sauna Trail podcast. Join us in our adventures as we share the story of how our family discovered the world of Finnish sauna. You might be wondering why anyone would do a podcast dedicated to something as commonplace as sauna. It's like doing a podcast about road signs or bricks or folk bands from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Well, if you stick around, you might find out that there's more to sauna than you realized. Last episode, we wrapped up our first year of sauna discovery. Early in our sauna journey, we had created a sauna bucket list, and we'd been steadily crossing off items from that list. Things like using a wood-fired sauna or plunging into a lake between sauna rounds. We've posted the whole bucket list on our locals page.
Speaking of bucket lists, I'd also like to share with you my life's bucket list, which will be quick because it only had one item in 2016. Today's episode has me checking off that item. What was it? To see my favorite band, the Innocence Mission, live in concert. They're a folk band in Pennsylvania who've been around since the 80s. You heard their song Mile Marker as the intro music for this episode. And while crossing off that bucket list item might sound easy, it was proving surprisingly difficult for me. We tried to see them in Brooklyn, New York in 2007, but after we had booked plane tickets and hotel rooms, they had to cancel because of health reasons. But we still had a great trip. My brother and his girlfriend even got engaged while we were there. And the Innocence Mission didn't play another concert for the next 9 years. But in 2016, they made a surprise announcement that they were performing at a local music festival in their hometown of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So, of course, we immediately booked tickets. We couldn't take our kids with us because the festival was 18 and over.
Yeah, so then you guys ended up going to the concert and left us kids behind at Grandma and Grandpa's. And I remember we went to bed one night and I just could not fall asleep. And then I started crying because I was kind of mad I didn't get to go to the concert and I missed you guys. So I went upstairs and I think it was around 12:30 at night, and Grandpa was at the dining room table and he was like drawing or drafting a floor layout of a house or something. And I sat down and I was just crying. And I remember Grandpa and I talked for probably a good hour and he was just comforting me and whatever, but I was very bummed that I didn't get to go.
So were you more sad that you were missing us or that you missed out on the concert?
Probably that I missed the concert, but I was still pretty little, so I don't remember exactly why I was crying. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, spoiler alert, we went to the concert, and after we had things booked, then they announced concerts in Chicago, which isn't far from us, and Minneapolis, which is even closer to us, after we'd booked to travel all that distance to Pennsylvania. But after the concert in Pennsylvania, they ended up canceling those concerts.
Yeah,
And so they haven't had any concerts since 2016.
we were pretty lucky.
Yeah, we crossed off the item on our bucket list, but it's still on your guys' bucket list. So we'll see if you ever get to cross that off. So at this point, whenever we traveled somewhere, we were always looking for lodging with sauna
Yep.
because we didn't have one at home. And on this trip to Pennsylvania, we happened to find one. So we headed off to Pennsylvania to see our favorite band and enjoy a new sauna. In this week's episode, we'll have 2 parts. First, we'll talk about our trip in general and that sauna that we used. And then in the second part, we'll share about our favorite band. The Innocence Mission's music has been a soundtrack on many of our sauna journeys. Different albums remind us of different trips. So maybe you'll find them a good soundtrack too on your sauna trail. And in that second part, we'll tell you some of each of our favorite songs and albums. So, all of our sauna hounds, you can enjoy this first part of the episode. And if you want to stick around, you can. If you're not interested in folk music from Pennsylvania, feel free and check out.
But it's okay if you want to stick around.
So, like I mentioned, at this point in our sauna journey, if we were going somewhere new, we wanted to try and find a sauna to use. And there were a few kind of in the general area of Lancaster, but some of them were like a few hours away.
Yeah, Christopher did all of the research, so I don't really remember the different ones that you found. I just remember the one we went to.
Yeah, there was one that I really wanted to go use. It looked really interesting. We'll show some pictures on the video. But it was owned by a guy named Michael, and it was called Woodcliff Cabin. And so we chatted back and forth about that one, but it was just too long of a drive. And I think there was also one in New York that I found, but again, it was just too long of a drive to get to the concert and back.
Yeah, and I think we were only gone for a few days, so we didn't want to spend most of the time just driving all over.
Yeah, so the one we found was called Nantmeal Country House, and it was owned by an artist and maker named Bob Ingram, and that was about an hour from the concert venue. So, what do you remember about the house and the sauna?
The house was so it wasn't like when we usually went and had a rental, we usually had the whole house to ourselves. I think this is one of the first times where we rented a room in the house. And so I think there was another guest there.
Yep.
And it was like a community kitchen type thing. I remember the house was nice and big. I didn't feel like I didn't have enough space.
Yep.
But I don't know. I feel a little awkward like meeting people that I don't know and we're like sleeping in the same house. I don't know.
Yeah, same here. But he was a gracious host, and he showed us around
Yep.
different parts of the property and showed us many of the things that he had made.
Yeah, he was very nice.
Including the sauna.
Yeah.
So he'd built a small sauna, a small mobile wood-burning sauna. And I'm trying to remember, was this our first mobile sauna that we used?
I think so. I think it was.
And it might have been the smallest sauna that we've used to this point.
And I think you say mobile now, and I don't think I even realized then exactly what it was. I think I just, in my head, it was just a very small sauna.
Yeah.
The sauna itself, I remember it was just one bench, and the stove was in the middle of in the middle of the wall, like of the sauna. And so you walked in, then the stove, and then was on your left, and the bench was on your right. And I remember it was one bench, but it was high because I remember I think you had to help me get up onto the bench because I couldn't really get up there by myself.
Yeah. And he also had like an outdoor kind of shower bath area that he had with kind of a privacy fence around it.
I don't really remember using the shower super well. Maybe I didn't really appreciate it for what it was, and I think it just felt kind of weird too for me because I knew that there were like people in the house, and I mean, obviously we were wearing suits, but it was just, I don't know, I still felt kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't remember tons about that sauna. The bench was pretty high up, and, I think it scratched the sauna itch. I do remember Bob saying to us that he couldn't really sauna anymore, that there was some physiological thing going on where his body just wouldn't tolerate the sauna exposure.
Yeah, I think he just didn't feel good, or it made him feel like bad.
Yeah, I remember asking him about electrolytes maybe or something else, but it was just the saddest story I've ever heard.
I hope he can sauna now. I don't know.
And then what do you remember about Pennsylvania? Because we spent a little bit of time kind of driving around and exploring.
So I had never been, other than like New York, I hadn't been to the East Coast. And I remember how beautiful and small the roads were. Like, I remember enjoying the drive in the countryside that we took, and the roads were kind of curvy, smaller, trees. Like, it was just so scenic. And I just, I don't know. I guess I didn't expect that because in my head, I think East Coast, and all I think of like is New York City and just city and buildings and people. But this was quite lovely and not what I was expecting. On our honeymoon, we flew out to California, but then we drove a lot on our honeymoon up and down the coast of California. I think just driving, like you and I just driving on these smaller roads was like, oh yeah, I like doing this. Like, it's fun, and we like to explore and see new things and be on the road. So
Yeah, I remember being struck by all the old stone barns. It really had a nice sense of history there, nice rolling countryside. It was beautiful. I would love to go back there again. I think I put in my notes that there was a road called Flowing Springs Road that was nice to drive on.
maybe that's what I'm thinking of in specific. Who knows?
And then came the main event. Sauna wasn't the main event for this trip.
No, I think we only sounded one time.
Yeah, but then we went to the concert.
Well, before we got into the concert, Christopher and I got there pretty early for the performance, and so we waited in line because we had tickets, but there wasn't assigned seating. So you just went in, it was like an auditorium. So you just went in, you found your own seat. So we wanted to make sure we got good seats. So we got there and we were the first in line. And so that was pretty cool. And while we were waiting in line, this gentleman came and introduced himself and asked if he could interview us for the local newspaper, right?
Yep.
And we were like, oh, okay, sure. And so they featured us in one of their articles there about coming out to see the Innocence Mission all the way from Minnesota. And we even told them like we had gone to try to see them in New York, but they canceled. And then, so that was pretty fun to be a part of that too. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to know who traveled the furthest, but we were definitely in the group of people that traveled a ways. There's probably people that traveled from like California or something.
Yeah, maybe. I think the article said we might have traveled the furthest, but
they probably didn't interview everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fake news. Yeah, so it was great. I got to meet other Innocence Mission fans there, some who I didn't know. And then, like, even some people I'd met online, like Keith Abbott, who runs an Innocence Mission fan group. And then afterwards, we even got to meet Dawn and Karen.
Yeah, that was really cool. So I think we caught up with Keith, and he was like, oh, I think he said something about meeting them and waiting for them. So we just waited with him and got to meet them at the end. I'm surprised like we didn't did we not like have a cell phone to like take a picture, or was that like, because we don't have a picture of that or anything.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think we were just so awestruck to like have met them in person that I don't know, I probably wasn't even thinking clearly.
Well, and sometimes it's just nice to meet the person, and sometimes taking a photo kind of ruins that moment.
That's true. That is true. Like Karen's so quiet, but like Dawn didn't say much either, and so I don't, I think we just chatted for a bit, and then it was like they had to go back to their life, like they got their kids and whatever else they're doing. So
yeah, and the concert was great. The music was really beautiful. I think I cried at one point.
You did. I think I teared up too, only because they played a few songs that reminded me of the kids, and then I also missed the kids. But I think we were in the third row, right? I don't think we wanted the first row. I think we wanted to be just a little bit back on the third row, and that was just super cool. to be that close and to hear them live.
Yeah, and they did a great job.
Yeah, they did. They really did.
So for the rest of this episode, we'll just be going kind of into a semi-deep dive about the Innocence Mission, sharing their history and some of our favorite songs, kind of tell you why we like them. Nala, do you want to give people kind of a background on the history of the Innocence Mission?
Sure, I can try. In the late 70s, the band members of the Innocence Mission met at their Catholic high school when they did a production of Godspell together. Eventually, they formed a band and began playing live shows. They did a lot of covers. The members were Don, Karen, Keith, and Steve. They eventually released some of their albums, and they were kind of a pop indie rock and had the height of their popularity in the 90s.
Yeah, they were even on David Letterman. I think you should be able to find that performance online.
Yeah, I think you've shown it to me several times.
And I think they had a song on 90210.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so in the late 90s, their drummer left and they adopted a distinct change in style. So their music was more stripped down and folk.
Yeah, and that was about the time that I learned of them. I had heard of them, I think it was probably the early 2000s. My bestie, Lonnie McFarlane, we like to geek out on music and share different random tracks with each other. This was like in the days of mp3.com and post Napster. And he showed me a song of theirs called Snow, but it was a remix. It was called the Gus Gus remix. So we'll share a little bit of that so you can hear what it sounds like. And I didn't love that at first, but eventually Karen's voice started to grow on me, and the more that I heard of their music, I became hooked. The two albums they had released around that time period were Birds of My Neighborhood and Small Planes. And those albums are still some of their best. And their change in style, I would describe it at that point in the early 2000s as kind of like a cross between the Red House Painters, John Denver, and Joni Mitchell. And our kids have basically grown up listening to their music. Even when they were really young, the Innocence Mission had come out with a lullaby album called Now the Day Is Over. And so I think they'd heard that some when they were young, as well as their other albums. And we've gifted that album to people when they have kids.
Yeah, it's a good album. I liked it.
Speaking of good albums, what are your guys' favorite albums?
My favorite album is usually Sun on the Square. I like it for writing, it's really good. But other times it's My Room in the Trees. I basically have 5 songs that I like from Sun on the Square.
Yeah, My Room in the Trees is my favorite album. I think overall the experience from the first song to the last, it's just a really nice listening experience as a whole album. I do love the cover art for that album too. The art's just really nice.
Oh, and she does the art, right, Karen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to be clear, Becca doesn't have a room in the trees. That's the name of the album.
Yes. Would be nice to have Room in the Trees, but that is the album. My favorite album is Karen's solo album, Violet. That one has a lot of piano or organ music, which I really like. I like the sound of piano. So I really like that one musically. One that would get honorable mention from me would be Street Map. I just think that one is underrated and I really like it musically.
My favorite album is Go When the Morning Shineth, which is actually not by the Innocence Mission, but by one of the band members, Don Paris. He did solo guitar albums, and this is one of them.
What's your favorite, hon?
I think my favorite is Hello, I Feel the Same. And I wanted to share this story because I don't even think I've told you this story. So Hello, I Feel the Same came out in 2015, which is the same year that we discovered sauna. But it was also that difficult time in our marriage. And I remember one evening after like another day, another week, another month of just talking and not feeling like we were going to get anywhere. We just felt stuck in our marriage, stuck in our life, frustrated, depressed, whatever, all of the emotions. And I had my phone. I was in bed. You were downstairs doing something. And I started just playing Hello, I Feel the Same. And I was like, I wonder what she's saying. So I went and like pulled up the lyrics and I basically listened to the entire album while reading the lyrics. And each song it was like there was a difficulty or something that there's a question that she was asking. And then there was always hope in the song. And so I'll share a little bit more about one of the songs from that album, but that's one of my favorite albums. I think there's so much hope and encouragement in that album for me.
And then I think I'm going to cheat for my favorites. It's a 3-way tie.
Hey, that's not fair.
Small Planes, My Room in the Trees, and Karen's solo album, Violet. If I had to pick one, it might be Small Planes. And what are some of your favorite songs and why, if people were to just go listen to something?
My favorite song would be one of Don Paris's songs, After the Fair, which is an instrumental guitar song. And I like it because it's good for like kind of background music. You don't have to have it super loud. It's just good. Sometimes I fall asleep to it.
Yeah, doesn't that one kind of sound like it's like at night?
Yeah.
So we'll play a little clip of that so you guys can hear that.
My top 2 songs are Tom on the Boulevard from that album Hello, I Feel the Same, and another one from Small Planes, I Have Loved You. I like both songs musically a lot. I like Tom on the Boulevard. It's very nostalgic. It reminds me of driving around the UP because I think we listened to that album on one of our UP trips. And I also like that one lyrically, especially the beginning of the song.
Slipside Street, narrow and dirty, with fear will bring.
And then my other favorite, I Have Loved You. I like it lyrically as well, and I like how simple they kept it musically.
I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have called you, and you are mine.
Yeah, and I think that was even written by someone from Minnesota.
Really?
Yep.
Things you learn.
My top 2 songs would be Shadow of the Pines and North American Field Song. I like Shadow of the Pines because the piano at the start is really nice and the melody I just really like. And the lyrics is good and I mean it's just a great song. Very calm.
Well, let's listen to a little clip of that one.
Leaving the shadow of the pines, some lost things I will hope to find again. I imagine
I like North American Field Song because the instrumentals are really good and it's well put together, well made. I also like it because whenever I'm like stressed out or something, when I listen to it, there's lyrics in a certain part where Karen says, stay calm, stay calm. And I don't know, that's just really nice when I'm like stressed out or upset or anything.
Very cool.
Stay calm, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. In the meantime, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Through the red and the green light, stay calm.
My top 2 songs would be Blue and Yellow and Brotherhood of Man. Blue and Yellow is off of Hello, I Feel the Same. And like you were saying, Mommy, it is a very hopeful album. One of the lyrics in Blue and Yellow is talking about like, she says, on the morning with bells sending up songs of forgiveness, righting every wrong.
Mhm.
And then she says later, to let love that's here lift us from the ground. So it's a very hopeful song and asking for forgiveness and just making things right. And I love the music with that song too.
Carrying your blue and yellow painting in the air, crossing the morning and the early streetlights shining trees down onto your hair.
I also like Brotherhood of Man because it's a song where she talks about little stories of people who made a difference in her life, even though she only met them once and didn't even learn their name.
All day since your haircut in the morning, you have looked like a painting, even more than usual.
And so that's one thing I love about the Innocence Mission is the lyrics are just so simple, but at the same time have so much meaning and apply to just life, the simple things in life, the little stories in life, and Karen coming away with such meaningful messages from them.
Yeah, they're very biographical.
Yeah.
So I think, and they've shared this before, some of their albums reflect a time in their life when they were having difficulty having kids or after the passing of a parent, those kind of things. And you can, if you read the lyrics and listen to the music, you can hear those things.
2 of my favorite songs are When Mac Was Swimming and When the One Flowered Suitcase. So When Mac Was Swimming is on their Befriended album. So it's one of their older ones. And one of my favorite lines about that song says, "Nobody knows, darling. Nobody knows how they are loved. Don't worry, my darling. The sun's coming up." For me, this song, it's like we don't know how much we're loved. You know, it's a little bit like God. For me, it was like saying, God loves you. You don't know how God loves you. He made the sun and the moon, and he loves you, and the sun's coming up, and then the music of it, how she sings that, like I love. There's a certain line right before the chorus where her voice goes up, and it's just beautiful. I love it. That's probably one of my favorite parts in the whole song too.
When Mac swimming. I was running late, walking around New Orleans, looking for a birthday cake. It was a great surprise to him. So many people came.
And then when the One Flowered Suitcase from Hello, I Feel the Same, this was one of the songs that kind of reminded me of our marriage, of what I wanted to do in our marriage. And I think it was a reflection of both God to us, and when I say us, I mean Christopher and I. So God to Christopher and I, and then Christopher and I to each other. And so the lyric is, let's say we are tired from getting our hopes up again. Again, let's say we are tired. Yes, it's all right. I hear you. Yes, it's all right. Yes, it's all right. I'm with you. And I think sitting in my bedroom after a long day of talking and not getting anywhere, I think we were both tired. We were tired of trying and then failing and trying to work through things and just feeling like we were back at, like, it was like one step forward and two steps back. Like every time. For a long time, it felt like that. But I feel like this song, these lyrics are like, it's okay. We'll carry each other through these forests, through these long buildings, up every stair flight. And God hears us. And let's try and hear each other. And let's try and be together and do this together. And so, I think like Sauna was a big part of bringing us together. But I think too, like their music is, there's heartache in the music and in the lyrics. Like you can tell, I think Karen probably struggles with anxiety or depression a little bit, but there's always so much hope in her songs and in her music. There's kind of a sadness, but a deep joy that is within each song that's written that I can hear. And it's more than just a soundtrack. I feel like it's carried me through some dark times too.
Well, let's hear a little bit of that song.
Let's say we are tired from getting our hopes up again. Let's say we are tired. Say it's alright, I hear you. Yes, it's alright. Yes, it's alright, I'm with you.
And a couple of my favorite songs are, musically, it's probably Lakes of Canada, which is one of their more well-known songs. It's been covered a lot, notably by Sufjan Stevens. And it has just a nice kind of bouncy guitar element to it, which is very difficult to cover well. And it paints a really good picture of this moment of being on a lake in Canada. Karen is a really good lyricist, and she reads a lot of poetry and has kind of gotten us into poetry somewhat. And one of those songs where I always come back to the lyrics the song is called Snow.
Yeah, when Snow was one of the first songs that you, Daddy, had Nala and I look into that song and read the lyrics of it. I think I might have been around 10, and we went over the lyrics and read them. And I think that was the first time where I realized how much Karen put into the lyrics in such simple words, but there was so much there. And I kind of learned that music is a way of expressing meaningful stuff, like through a story and through music and instruments and voice. And so that was really cool for me.
Yeah, so I'll read a little bit of the lyrics of that one. We won't play the music, but I'll read a few of the lyrics. If I go out in the morning snow, in my pajamas and my winter coat, and take from the house our darker thoughts, and take away the memory of loss. And if I drop them into the snow, will we never find them anymore? So it's like the meeting of your life and your circumstance, and then putting it in kind of this picture or metaphor of wintertime. The final verse in that song is, "Some winters are harder than others. We are going to take our cameras and look through at black trees with empty arms and sled tracks wandering as we are." So that pretty much wraps up our Love of the Innocence mission, although it only really covers a drop in the bucket of what we could say.
Yeah, he was like, you have to pick 2 of your favorite songs. And everybody was like, 2?
We only covered the tip of the iceberg.
That's right.
But if you could check out their music and see if it's something that you might like.
Thanks for joining us on this trip to Pennsylvania to Sauna and hear some beautiful music. We hope you're having a wonderful time exploring the world of sauna on your own trail. If you haven't yet, join our locals community and say hi. It's free to sign up. You'll get regular updates from us. And if you enjoy our content and would like to support this podcast, Locals has the option as well. The address is thesaunatrail.locals.com. We appreciate all of our supporters and fellow sauna hounds. Our podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and other streaming platforms, as well as our website, thesaunatrail.com. New episodes release Saturdays, which is the traditional Finnish day for sauna, also called Saunapaiva. We hope to see you on the Sauna Trail.